everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul. We're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast, where we discuss the ongoing lives and issues of people with developmental disabilities to spark positive change in the field.
And we have a lot of fun doing it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. If you can help us out, go down below and hit that subscribe button. And luckily for you today, we have our special guest, Sarra Burnham. She's joining us this lovely, dreary afternoon. But Sarra, thank you for coming in. And before we dive into the hard-hitting questions that we always ask here at Friends for Life, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. I'm Sarra Burnham. I work at the Lucas County Board of Developmental Disabilities. I have been with the board over 20 years. So I currently am the Community Inclusion and Employment Manager. And so I oversee a lot of our programs that support individuals getting connected into the community, whether that's employment, Special Olympics, travel training. We do something called Community Connections, where we work with someone one-on-one. And does that mean volunteering? Is there a fun place I want to go spend time? So I've actually been in that role for about a year now, a little over a year. And before that, I was a coordinator, like a supervisor in the service and support department with a focus on kids. And before that, I was an early intervention developmental specialist. So I worked with the babies up till age 3. I did that for about 16 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's been where I've spent most of my career. Before that, I worked at, I don't know if anyone remembers Connecting Point.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, it was a mental health agency, and I also worked primarily with kids there.
Awesome. Well, the question that we always are interested in right off the bat is, how did you get into this? Because I think the consensus for most people, it was kind of accidental, but it's not everyone. So how did you fall into the D&D field specifically?
That's a great question. And yes, when I started actually in my college career, it was not necessarily what I was thinking of first. I actually started as a journalism major. Nice. And I really loved to write. And what I realized was I loved to write, but it wasn't necessarily what I thought was my calling. So I had done some programs in high school that I really loved connecting with people. So I switched my major in college to psychology and then switched to social work. And what I liked about social work was you got to work right away, because I was able to get my social work license. And I was ready to jump in, because sometimes that's how you know what you love to do is by just getting in there. Right. And I really did want to work with kids. I really felt strongly about that. I think because I think kids need more of a voice. I think a lot of times when you're growing up and kids, you got to roll with what life throws at you. You don't always have as much choice, as much freedom. And it was just something I felt passionate about with some of the volunteer experiences I was having. So I really had thought I wanted to focus on that. So that was kind of where I started my career, was mental health. And I really loved that job, but I was actually working together with some teams that had a DD support, like whether it was service and support or early intervention. And, take that kind of feeling of a child doesn't always have a voice. And then sometimes a person with a disability. And the board actually approached me and said, hey, would you ever think about coming to interview here? And I was like, really? And they said, yeah. And so that was kind of how I got connected. And they were really looking for someone to focus with kids. So I interviewed for early intervention. And I got that role. And that was what kind of started my introduction to working with people with disabilities. And I think what's been really fun is starting this, working at the board as long as I have, I've been able to see certain individuals across their lifespan where there are certain individuals now that I see out in the community that I knew them as a baby. Wow. And have got to just kind of follow their journey and to see them out in the community living their lives. Oh, it's amazing. So yeah, some of our best athletes are, our Special Olympic athletes. I'm like, yep, I remember when you loved Veggie Tales, and it's been kind of fun. And there was even actually a young person that I worked with who the last couple years, he was valedictorian of his high school.
Oh, nice.
So that part, to see somebody supported throughout their lifespan, and to see that there's so many possibilities. And I think that sometimes what happens, even as a parent myself, you kind of already get such a preconceived notion of what does your life journey going to mean. And to take one of the things I always felt so passionate about with early intervention was don't ever shortcome your dreams for your child. It may look different.
Yeah.
It may not be the exact vision, but that's part of being a parent of any child. And, don't ever have shortcome what your child could be or what your child's life could mean. And so to be able to do that and to see some of those stories has been really cool.
I like that you mentioned about the children expectations and listening to them. My wife and I were looking at a study in regards to how I believe it's from the aspect that we as parents, we tell them, be quiet, don't talk, don't do this, don't do that. And they don't have a way of showing their emotions in a sense. It's always do as I say, not as I do, or, that kind of thing. And I'm guilty. I am 100% guilty of this. I love my kids. I do. Kids, I love you. Yeah. But have you seen that, throughout your time working with children? Do you feel as if even some of the children probably didn't have, it's already you're dealing with someone with a developmental difference, and now they're constantly being almost bombarded with orders. Have you seen maybe a decline in people wanting to speak up for themselves as they become older, or is that not a thing that people are looking for?
I think it depends on the individual and the experiences that they have. One of the things that I've been able to do kind of in my work, which I'm very grateful for, that when I was working at Connecting Point, I worked with a lot of children who were experiencing severe trauma, and whether that was very young children, teenagers, and I am, really some tough stuff. And I think that one of the things we've learned, especially we've had a lot of progress the last 20 years, is to really understand the impact of trauma. One of the, there's some work, someone named Dr. Bruce Perry, and he's written a lot of books, and, a lot of people, I'm a little bit of a geek, so when I'm like, ooh, research, and how can we turn this into really using this to advocate for people, amazing. So one of the things that we used to think is, there's a violent scenario in the home, and you've got a 17-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a baby. We used to always think, well, the baby doesn't know what's going on. They're the least impacted. We really need to focus on these other kids. Right. They've really done research to show, actually, it's that baby that's the most impacted. It's actually reshaping how their brain works. Wow. And I think that being able to promote things like self-advocacy, how to appropriately speak up for yourself, how to communicate, and for us as the people who support those kids and then adults, how do we know how to listen? How do we respond? And I think that, I always want to put a shout out, as parents, we're doing the best we can. Right. We really are. We're trying. We love our kids. We want to do our best, same as professionals. But the exciting thing about the work that's happening is we know how to do better. And that we're always moving forward in this field. The work how we supported people, 50 plus years ago. At the time, those were people doing the best they could with what they thought was the best. And we've learned from that. And I think that if we can always be learning in this field and growing, that's really exciting. So I think that it really depends how we respond to them. I think that supporting parents how to respond to their children and to let their children have a voice, I think that if we do that together, and it's a combination of the school and the professionals and supporting parents, hardest job ever, that's where we can really make a powerful impact in as a community.
I like you took me back to a memory of Malcolm in the Middle. And if anybody doesn't know, there were three
Yes.
Three
Boys.
kids. Yeah, well, three in the house and then the older one. And not to put any of them down, but Malcolm was like the genius. And the Reese was kind of just like a hothead who didn't do much. And the youngest kid, I can't remember his name, but he was just a little off.
I can see him.
Yes. It
was it Dewey?
Yeah, Dewey.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, they had a scenario where the mom was pregnant with Dewey. She was standing by her microwave while the dad was reading to Reese some kind of special book to make them really smart. And she's like, "That's not teaching him. He was just eating the shoestrings earlier." But Malcolm was was younger and he was gathering all this information. So I just think it's real funny on we don't always know who's picking it up. Like I teach a lot of business stuff to my older kids. But it seems like the younger ones, they grasp it as
they're
as
watching you constantly, which
thought-
is a lot of pressure, right?
Well, it's funny you mention that because it's like you always see stuff at stores. You're speaking of like childhood trauma and stuff, and I was at the store the other day and I just saw this like dad just being so mean to this kid, and I just felt like bad, and it's like I wonder how much of that stuff happens and the kids end up just becoming like real either like quiet because they're always being told to shut up all the time. I mean, kids can be annoying too. Like I was a kid. I was really annoying. You think I talk a lot now? You should have saw me when I was a kid. But
I said it was.
But it's wild when you see that in the store because like the kid was just like in his cart and his mom was pushing him and he's like playing. He's a kid and it's like going to the grocery store is boring as an adult, let alone as a small child.
Facts.
And this dad was just like berating this child. Like he was like far away too. He's like, "You need to shut up. We're in the store." I was like, "You look like the a-hole here, dude." Like the kid is just a kid. So, it really sucks to see that, and you wonder like what impact those moments have on little kids because he didn't seem to be affected. The kid was still just like but and do you, and mental health's a huge topic nowadays, obviously with how especially since with COVID and it's like basically a global experiment on getting locked in and seeing what happens with that stuff. So what's some advice you have, if any, for people like on how to maybe deal with these mental health issues because like we're all just dealing with it in real time. We all kind of are in this weird phase of life right now and we don't really know how to cope with this weird thing we're all dealing with still. Years later, we're still dealing with it. So what's, that's a long question. I'm sorry.
No.
That's what I do.
And I think it's so relevant. I mean, it's something that I talk about a lot, not just professionally, but personally. Just as someone who, as a parent who also has gone through this time, and it's been tough. And I think one of the biggest things, I'm even thinking of your grocery store scenario, and it was just this week, there was somebody they were talking about. I wish I could remember what it was, but I think the number one thing right now is empathy.
Yes.
Is just to be able to acknowledge for each other, like, we know this is tough. It's going to be okay. I'm here with you. And the story that I had heard it was another grocery store story. And it was this, it was a dad, and he was there with like 4 kids. The kids were insane, and they were kind of all over the place, and they were yelling, and the dad was just not responding. And I think somebody said to this dad, like, "Dude, what's going on? Are you going to control your kids?" And the dad said, "You know what? We actually just left the hospital and they just lost their mom. We lost our mom today."
Oh, wow.
And he goes, "And I don't think my kids know what to do right now because I don't know what to do." And he said, he goes, "I know we probably look like a hot mess right now, but we are." And he said, "So we're going to get my stuff." And of course, then "I'm so sorry." And, he got some support in that moment. But the reason that story was shared was because we never know what someone's going through. And, you always wonder what's the backstory. And I really think this, my personal opinion is that, and what some of our professional recommendations have been, is just to really try and support every piece of that situation, to support our parents, to support our kiddos, and to just really wrap around ourselves as a community again. We've communicated a lot through electronically, which has some value, and has some value for being connected, but we know that so much of communication it's our eye contact, it's our facial expressions, it's our body language. So we don't always get the full picture sometimes behind a Facebook post or things like that. So I think when we can, as much as we can, just try and support each other and show empathy and get connected again, and, get excited about things again. Like, we need those happy moments. So much of the past couple years has been, be afraid. I think I remember I was like, I'd like to open the news today and not be afraid I'm going to die. You know what I mean? And it was so many negative messages. And I know I'm very careful now. I don't know how you guys are, but I closed some of those news apps. They don't show up on my feed. And so I go have a time of day where I go check, but then I close it because I'm like, I got to have times, especially before I go to bed, where my mind can be quiet and I can try and have some peace. And so I think that that's a big piece. And I think just, supporting each other and trying to be like, what do we need? And to try and get connected again.
Yeah. You know what? Quick, not all of my random thoughts are coming in today. I was reading something as well about, first thing in the morning. Instead of when you wake up, you should allow yourself at least an hour before you're going through any news feeds and stuff. And I am not going to lie, it is very, very hard for me to do that. I used to be as soon as I get up 4:30, I'm sending emails out. A lot of my staff be like, dude, we're still sleeping. So it's I think it's mental health has to have its priority somewhere. And it's up to us personally to do that at times, I think. So people put your phones down just a little bit. I
agree with you. I don't watch the news at all. I refuse to watch it because it's the same. I've even unfollowed on social media pretty much anything that just is negative or annoying, because I used to be a huge fan of NPR. Even they still are just posting stuff. I had to unfollow them because it's all so negative right now, and I'm just like, I'm not going to just be continually surrounded by this, because it does give you anxiety. And I think it's, I'm not saying what I'm doing is great to just completely check out from the news, but it's so awful all the time. It seems like even our local news, I'm not trying to bash or anything, but it's just negative. Somebody got shot. Oh, more COVID. Oh, this senator or this politician.
7 items in your bathroom that can kill you.
Yeah, it's always like that.
Dude, it's 11 in the morning. Yeah. I need to know now.
So I usually, on Tony's note, I wake up for the first hour. I'm huge into audiobooks. I'll listen to a book for probably the first hour, 45 minutes, just while I'm getting my coffee ready and getting breakfast and all that stuff. And it usually sets me up for a pretty good day, especially if I'm listening to stuff that I'm interested in or podcasts. It kind of gets you thinking a little bit. And then, when I'm doing the podcast, it obviously segues into cool topics that are a little off the beaten path. So yeah, what's your morning look like in that scenario? Are you just kind of sit down with a cup of coffee and read, or just chill, or run out the door?
Yeah, I'm actually laughing because I have 2 children who are school age. So,
Enough said.
Yeah, it's usually trying to do some of doing some of that. But once everybody's off to school and even starting work day, I do try and I know we've all had to be kind of mindful of a lot of, I'm doing a lot of reports, I'm doing a lot of Zoom meetings, I'm doing a lot of trying to be very responsive through emails, because I think that's really important. But then sometimes just to get up and stretch, or, try and have those mental health breaks too, or just things that you work into your day. But yeah, it is hard, because I know mornings it's you feel like you have to be ready right away. Yeah. You want to be there for everybody. So I do try and before I go to bed, I really try and give myself just even if it's 45 minutes of just quiet, whether it's, going for a walk by myself or, just anything just to kind of, reset my brain, have some calm, So it has been in my role at the board and even just as a parent, it's been hard because I think we know that there's a lot of people hurting right now and you want to be there as much as you can. And so I know we've got people who are working longer hours. I know like our providers are doing that. It's hard to ever feel like you can just let your guard down.
Yeah.
That has been hard. But I mean, I think I know we've gotten through some tough stuff. And I think I try and sometimes look at that, like how proud we should be for the work that we've done and how proud we should be right now.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I like about my current role is like connecting people to the community. I know from all this work that I've done that what builds resiliency, which is how do I get through the tough stuff? It's by being connected. It's by giving back. So supporting individuals of any needs to volunteer, to get back out there. Like it feels good to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that that's definitely a work in progress, but like, I'm like, okay, here's how I can give back. And I think that helps. Any way that you feel like you're giving back. But yes, it's challenging. It's something I'm hoping to do better at this next year is having moments of peace to set my mind frame for the day. Yeah, that's hard.
I've recently, found that same thing to be true because 24/7, I'm a go. From the time I wake up, my wife's, it drives her insane because the second my eyes open, I'm out of bed, I'm up, I'm making coffee, I'm banging pans, and I don't have an off switch. That sleeping is like the only time I usually get, and I've been really trying hard in the last year or so, and it's a total nightmare for me as a person to try and relax for the last hour of the day because I will get on my phone and check stuff or read or something until like 2 a.m. if I'm not careful. And I just am there. It's 2 a.m. I'm like, what have I done? Yeah. But, I've been, and not to distract from, this isn't the main point. I've gotten into hunting over the last like 5 or 6 years, and it's almost like how people talk about meditation and you can do this in your home, you can zone out. This year specifically for me, at the end of the work day, maybe 5 o'clock or so, I'll go out and sit in a deer stand, and it's really wild because it's quiet. There's nothing going on. I have no service on my cell phone in the area I'm at right now. I can't scroll through Instagram and Facebook. And for the first couple of days, it was very anxiety producing because I'm so used to being plugged in. I'm just like,
yeah.
And then I downloaded a book, like a reading book, because you need to be aware out there. So it's literally meditation in everything they tell you, being aware of your surroundings, kind of being in the moment. I'm out there like reading books, which I never read, like paper books or Kindle books on my phone. I never do that. And the sense of like calmness that I get from that 2.5 hours just sitting in the woods, basically. And I'm a terrible hunter. It's been 4 years since I've gotten anything. And that's fine with me. It's like, that's my moment. And then I go back home and I can kind of just like ease back into what I was doing. But it's like, that time's really important to me. And I think a lot of people should try and do something like you said, eat 45 minutes, a half hour where it's like off.
Yep.
Zone out, realize that there's a world around you. And that's coming from a guy who literally works in media and social media.
Right.
Like, you need to get away from it. It'll drive you insane. So that's some very good points. Like,
You got to go to my spot where I hunt. It's called Kroger.
But they do talk about that we use our phones and sometimes like, it's numbing, which is we do that with food. I have done it with food this past 2 years. I mean, some people use alcohol or other substances, but some social media can definitely where we're just looking and we're kind of like, we're not really intentional, and sometimes it's a very easy trap to fall into. And I think sometimes we all kind of used it as coping, or a lot of people did. I mean, I'm sure I did. And
memes are funny.
Yeah. But it's one
you
of
know,
the.
it's funny that you say it because I have literally pissed myself off by reading other people's feeds. I'm not even on
Yeah.
social media other than for business, but I'll read other people's stuff and see like all the negativity. Like, like you can work at a place and just spew nothing but hate, but work there for several years. Like, well, like help out a little bit. Say something positive. At least they pay
Yeah.
you. Like,
And I think we have to be really intentional about it. And I know sometimes something that I have done was I've listened to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. My favorite is Brene Brown, who
She's
does,
great,
and like I kind of got introduced to her with a lot of the trauma training I did, and
Her TED Talks are great. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
And she talks about, there's a difference between I'm so excited to watch this TV show. I'm getting my family, we're going to get food, we're going to sit, and it's like, ooh, I really love this. It's meaningful. Versus where you had that moment, like you said, Tony, you're like, I think I just lost an hour and a half and I don't even know what I did. And I don't feel rejuvenated from that. And so, but it's so easy to fall into that. And you have to be so intentional about almost trying to catch yourself.
yeah.
And yeah, that's hard. But yeah, I think like you said, like the hunting, you're like, okay. And then to realize like what you got from it and to try and have moments where you allow yourself to have that. And it's almost just like, I'm important enough that I'm going to allow myself to have time for this, and
It's hard, yeah. You get lost you get sucked into the wormhole in social media. I've had points where it's been like 2 hours straight of scrolling, and I was like, I didn't even read any of this. I was literally just on my phone,
looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a very important point nowadays, specifically because like there's so much media available.
Yeah.
And this is not a good advertisement for our podcast because it is true, because it's like, you have to pick the things you enjoy because, and this is completely unoriginal and it sounds bad, but for me, it's worked really well. And this is coming from like Gary Vaynerchuk or whatever, if anybody's a fan of him. A lot of people are huge fanatics of his, but he always says, when I get into these modes where I feel like I'm being distracted or whatever, if you literally tell yourself, and it's along the lines with this whole memento mori thing, like you will die someday, and you start thinking about that, it's like I'm wasting this little time of precious life that I have. So I'll say that to myself quite often, like, hey, I know you don't want to do this, but you're going to be dead someday, so you might as well go for it. And like, that's been a huge motivator for me. And it sounds morbid and terrible, but honestly, it's the reality of it really like. So I'm like, 32 years in, I got maybe another 40 if I'm lucky, 50 pushing it. Like, I got to do stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's a reality. I think people need to realize that more. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's a huge motivator.
I'm in my mid to late 40s. So yeah, you're definitely like, we're not messing around.
Yeah.
Like this is, I definitely think you have that moment. Well, and I think too, like it depends on, sometimes it's nice to connect with other people and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to get on the treadmill. I may listen to this podcast and then I'm getting two things done at once. And the podcast is motivating me to be on the treadmill and then I feel better. And I think it's just being really intentional about what you're picking to listen to and the message, like you said, am I really reading stuff that has a lot of negativity or sometimes you don't realize, like after you've had like a positive podcast or, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I realized how much I needed that.
Yeah.
Like to really be thoughtful about that. And I know that there's been a few things, this past several months. I know we had a unified softball league. And it was fun to go see it, but my husband played and he's like, I have missed this so much because he's been working, really focused on that and doing what we needed. But he's like, I had so much fun just connecting with people and playing. And like, I don't think we sometimes realize how much we needed that till we start to get it back.
Yeah.
So, I think that's definitely our hope for my hope for so many of us for this next year. It's like, let's get back to those things that kind of like filled us up and were meaningful, versus some of the stuff we did to survive,
Like you said, putting things in perspective. I mean, every view of stuff is different. And yeah, big shouts to Gary Vee though, because even going back to what we were talking about with empathy, he has a wine called Empathy. It's a good wine too. But like he's very true. And I've said this in another podcast, but it's helped me create the mindset, even my kids. Like I have a family member who lost a child, and recently he even just passed away. So it was tough, and Paul and I were both going through some tragic losses in our family. But it got to the point, like, I look at my kids and I imagine them in coffins if I feel myself getting too upset with them. Like, this could be the last conversation we have, and I don't want it to be me scolding them for not doing the dishes or, them having a lasting impact. Like, I didn't say I love you when I left out because I was upset that they didn't follow through with something. Like, dude, they're just children. But
yeah, it's true.
So,
yeah,
I don't know,
and that's
that got morbid.
No, I think it's okay. I mean, I think what it is I'm laughing because I'm like, sometimes my kids are like, Mom, you're talking about Brene Brown again. I'm like, I am. But there's, like, if you Google Brene Brown empathy, there's a little video, and it's kind of like a cartoon. And it talks about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And sympathy is, oh, sucks to be you. Right. I'm so sorry. And empathy is, I'm going to be in the moment with you. And I know I can't fix it, but I'm just going to walk next to you. And it's like a video of being kind of like looking down at someone who's down in a hole and like looking down on them versus crawling down and just being there with them. Yeah. And just say, it's a really good video because it just puts it into a perspective. And then also, how do you take care of yourself while you're showing empathy? Because you kind of absorb some of that, and you have to be really mindful about, now I got to do some things to take care of myself so I can continue to really be present with that other person, because it's draining. And I think that's so relevant for everybody right now, but especially our helping professionals, our direct service providers, our social workers, our nurses, and it's definitely a time we have to be extra mindful about taking care of ourselves. And it's hard.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I've been in Zooms lately where everybody's just like, this is. I mean, they're drawn down. So yeah, definitely.
And it's funny you say that, because like I think built into how America is as a country, empathy is out the window. Like 99% of the people I talk to be like, oh, I just had this terrible day. They're like, suck it up. And it's like, yeah. So I think there's a lot to overcome with that as a society, because it's not something we are raised on as Americans a lot of the time. I mean, individual families and stuff, obviously, there's always more empathetic people than others. But I think like as a culture, it's more so of like, you need to do more and just deal with it. And I think coming through 2020 and all this stuff, I think a lot of people are starting to think like, maybe that's not the way things could be. Because look where it's landed us right now. Like it's been almost a huge disaster in that aspect.
Yeah. Well, but that's the issue with our field. When you're working with people and healthcare, and I think DSPs get the shaft in so many areas because they're not always looked at as being true healthcare professionals. I felt that disrespect growing up in the field and working, and I think the culture is changing a whole lot. Because back in the day, a SSA would come in, I would be on pins and needles. Like, oh my goodness, am I going to get in trouble? Did I do something wrong? And instead of us being there to commemorate as a team, collaborate, commemorate, collaborate as a team for this individual. But the culture is changing. And I think that especially after the last couple of years, SSAs are seeing, but they're seeing the sacrifices that DSPs are making. It just sucks that through a government stance right now, we can't do anything different. So it is what it is.
I do think I'm excited about some of the conversations, though, that are happening to try and shift that. And I do think that we're having some good conversations. I know I'm really glad, Tony, that you participate in a lot of those.
Oh,
you do it in such a way that's respectful, but powerful. And one of the really cool things is, our board right now is we have an individual who has a disability who's sitting on the board, and his voice is very powerful.
Yes.
I'm very honored to be able to work with him. And one of the things that we have some people in higher positions that this DSP crisis is hitting very home to them. Yeah. And they're saying it's time, and they're starting committees, and they're starting conversations, and they're reaching out to legislators. And I'm glad that we're shifting the conversation and really honoring that. I do have two cousins. They're two of my first cousins that have a disability. They both have autism. Okay. They live in Indiana. So, I'm not as connected with their professionals. I mean, I talk with my aunt, but one of my cousins has moderate autism, and he's in his 30s. So he does need a lot of support through the day, but, he does go to work and does a lot of things like that. And he's verbal. So if something's going on, think even in the middle of the pandemic when you couldn't go into group homes or ICF settings, that means intermediate care facilities. My aunt could at least call him on the phone and go, "How are you doing?" My other cousin is nonverbal, and has profound disabilities. And, my aunt has talked a lot about how they are their voice. Mm-hmm. They are their hand. They are the most important people in their lives. Mm-hmm. And, she's talked about how scary this time has been and how are they doing. And especially my cousin who's not verbal, I can't see him. I can't put my eyes on him. And how reliant she has been on those direct service professionals and how eternally grateful.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard because I think one of the things we know that regardless of where you work, appreciation is such a key. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it is how do we get that message of appreciation to the people who are in the trenches? Right. And it's my hope that through our conversations and our work that we are getting that out there, because I think in general employees want to feel more appreciated right now. I mean, especially my husband was somebody that he never took a day off during the pandemic. He was at work, physically there every day, providing some essential services. But at the same time, I mean, sometimes just a thank you. I see you. Mm-hmm. I appreciate everything you're doing to keep things going for people who really need your services. It matters. Yeah. And so I really think that that's a group. I hope we can share that message even more and more as we move forward.
Yeah. I'm happy enough to see that there will be rate increases come the beginning of the year.
Yay.
They kind of shot it out too quick, and they were going to say like November 1st, but it turns out that it's going to be January 1st, and it's not going to be much, but I think it's going to be enough to help some people keep their businesses afloat and keep their workers at least somewhat satisfied.
Awesome.
Yeah, so.
I think, those are all great points, actually. But I think that it's time to switch topics a little bit. Okay. Tony, and you know what time of the day this is.
It is time for Rapid Fire.
Okay.
All right. Rapid Fire is a part of our show in which I go over 3 questions. They are more of a, would you rather scenario.
Oh, okay.
So have fun. They're not too bad, but hey.
Some of them have been pretty wild. So.
Okay.
All right. Would you rather work on a boat catching fish or in a shop gutting them after they're caught?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to say the boat.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you like boats?
I do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Would you rather lose all your teeth and have a job on TV or do a radio show with a Barry White deep voice?
The Barry White deep voice. Yes, baby.
Yeah. I like it.
Great impression.
All right. Yeah. Lastly, would you rather would you rather go to school with your kids for a week or have your kids come to work with you for a week? Yeah, I know which one I'll pick.
I'm laughing because I'm like, I don't think my kids would like that.
Yeah.
You know what? I'd probably have my kids go to work with me And
Nice.
there's been times they have been able to participate in my work, and it's been pretty cool. Like I have my daughter who's in college. She's a biology major, and the board kind of worked together with the health department to do some COVID clinics.
Nice.
And she came, and I think I roped in my sister and a couple friends, and it was awesome. And
Beautiful.
we were all there together, and so yeah. I know I'm laughing. I have a high schooler, and I think she'd be like, I would prefer neither. But yeah, I think sometimes it's fun to get to share that with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say have them come, and especially the type of work that I do, there's some cool things to see, some cool experiences to have.
Yeah. We are really big on including our children, and I think that society should start doing that, especially in our professions. I do think that we shelter our children too much when it comes to finances and work ethic and things like that. We need to really show them like everything is not handed to you.
Yeah, and then actually just kind of see, I mean, I think there's something about it's cool for them to get to see what you do.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. Tony brought his daughter in one time, and she was up just cleaning around the office, and I said, "Oh, you're the new janitor?" She says, "No, I'm a sanitation expert." I was like, "Well, excuse me."
Don't hate on their custodial skills.
Yeah.
She did a good job. But before we wrap up here, why don't you kind of let people know if they want to learn more about like the Lucas County Board or stuff, where they can get that information, or if they have any opportunities where they'd like to connect with you, if you want to share that information through work and stuff like that, where they can go, and we'll wrap it up.
Sure. I think probably one of the best places to learn about the board is just to go to our website, which is www.lucasdd.info. And, you know, I have been very fortunate to work with a variety of programs at the board, but we truly support someone throughout their entire life. So think about when they maybe come home from that NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, to their last moments of life. So there's a lot of information about all of our programming on the website. But if someone specifically wanted to connect with me about anything I've talked about today, they could email me at sburnham@lucasdd.org. And I'd be happy to connect with you if anybody had any questions or just wanted more information. If they're interested in maybe looking at the field, I'd be more than happy to talk to them.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Hey, I'm glad you had fun.
I have no problem talking.
Yeah. That's what me and Paul said. Like, we just talk too much anyway, so we might as well put it on wax.
Yeah, usually people are nervous, and then we get them in here, and they're like, "Oh, that wasn't that bad." We're like, "Yeah, I know. It was. We're trying to have a good time. I'm trying to have a good time at work." So, yes, thank you, Sarah. And if anybody watching or listening, if you could either leave us a review on iTunes or a rating, or subscribe to our YouTube channel here. We got all of our podcasts on here you can watch. We also got other stuff, so go check those out. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.